All right, so now we're going to be doing NeoPixel 220, and this is going to be an introduction to POTS. This is basically an introduction to analog voltage. So the Arduino's got a bunch of digital pins and a couple analog pins, right? So we're going to be plugging this into the analog pins. This can take whatever voltage you have and divide it into segments. It can divide it evenly upon like turning this knob here, right? So if you have, let's say if it's all the way down, right? So it's pointed all the way down here and it's getting 0 volts and 5 volts, it's just going to show 0 volts. As I start turning this up, turning the knob up here, it's going to start showing 1 volt, 2 volt, 3 volts, 4 volts, but it won't actually show it like that. So this is a 10-bit analog uh, converter here on the Arduino Nano. And so it's actually going to show 0 all the way up to 1023. Once it gets 5 volts, it's going to show 1023. That's because there's 10 bits, and the maximum value of a 10-bit number is 1023. Okay? So I'm going to solder this up, plug it in, and test it. I'm just going to dim one of the LEDs using this. And then the 210 series will go from there. So I got my soldering iron warmed up. I'm going to tin these pins here. I typically like to work over like a piece of wood or something, but I'm sure my table will be fine. I like to use linoleum squares for my table too, so if I do mess anything up, I can just peel it off and replace it. And it looks cool. It looks nice in pictures. Okay, then I'm gonna take my strands here and expose some tips. Okay, just little tiny chunks, about 1/8 of an inch. There we go. Okay. Get my soldering iron out. I'm going to just tin these tips here. So, soldering iron, right? Put a little puddle on it. Put the wire into the puddle and then feed fresh solder so it actually flows. That's what I'm doing here. Okay. And now I'm going to take my knob here. So, it goes ground, data out or analog out, and then 5 volts. So that way when it's turned all the way down, it's grounded. When it's turned all the way up, it's 5 volts. We can always fix that in software, but we might as well just do it right while it's in front of us, while we have the chance. There we go. So there's ground. Got some data there. And then we have some, there it goes, some 5 volts. Oh, nope. There you go, that's a good melt. Okay. Now we have some 5 volts. Cool. So I'm going to hook it up to my Nano. Right now my Nano has NeoPixels on, let's see, so there's, on the ISP port, there's 5 volts, pin 11, and ground. So NeoPixels on pin 11. And then I'm going to take the backside here and expose just a little bit of wire. I'd like to twist them off actually, so I'm just going to lever it a little bit and then twist the tips of the plastic off. Okay, get a nice twist on that so we don't get frays. And there we go, kind of twist it off. I'm going to unplug my Nano while I'm soldering to it, probably a good idea. Okay, so where do we got 5 volts? There it is, way over here. So I'm going to put that wire into 5 volts on the Nano. There we go. Okay. Bring my solder up. Maybe. Kinda. All right. So let's see. The 5 volts is being pushed through. Try to get that flow. There we go. Cool. All right, so we got 5 volts. There's a ground right next to it. So I'll plug that in. Okay. There we go. And then we're analog. So I'm just going to go to analog. I'll go to analog 7 because it's right there, right next to it. I'll go to analog 6. That way it's evenly spaced. Now, if you're using an Uno, you don't have analog 6 or 7. You have 0 through 5. So if you're using an Uno to follow along, maybe choose a different port for analog. But if you're using a Nano, man, how did I get this tangled? There we go. Cool, something like that. Okay. But yeah, if you're using a Nano, you also have analog 6 and analog 7, so you have 2 more analog pins on it. Okay. So I'm gonna have it set up something like this, maybe. Let's see, gotta have it plugged in for the camera here. Okay. NeoPixel somewhat up, and access to this knob. Okay, well, the NeoPixels can broadcast out. That's cool, too. Okay. So, let's give that a bend there. Okay, let's give this a try here. So, I'm going to go to my program, and I can see that I've got all the basics, right? So, I've got my LED count. There's 11 LEDs on that strip. I've got the LED signal on pin 11, okay? So, I created an object called strip using the Adafruit NeoPixel library. All right, I did a strip.begin, strip.show. Okay, so on the Arduino, like a lot of these boards, you have to tell it whether the pin's an input or an output. And I just set this up to A6. By default, all the inputs are inputs, right? Or all the analogs are inputs. All the digitals are inputs. So everything's input. So I don't need to do a pin mode command up here. What I can do, though, is do an int pot equals... Let's see, what would the pot equal? Analog read. So I'm going to do an analog read command on pin 6, or analog read 6. On the analog 6. Analog channel 6, I guess is the technical term. Okay. So I'm doing an analog read on the analog channel 6 and storing that value into pot, right? Pot is short for potentiometer in a lot of our programming, okay? So what I'm going to do now here is just write to the NeoPixel strip. And it's not going to work quite right, but that's okay. So we'll do a strip.set pixel color. And maybe we can spell that right. Cool. I'm going to do the third NeoPixel, which is pixel 2. So it'll be this one right next to the pot here. And that will be... Let's see. So I'm going to do it red, green. I'll do a green. 0, pot, 0. Okay. Then we need a strip.show. And then let's do a little delay here. So that way it's not constantly broadcasting to it. Not really a big deal, but makes me feel more comfortable. Okay, so let's look at our program while it's uploading. Or it's compiling. So we make a variable called pot. And we're going to read analog channel 6 and store that value into pot, right? We're going to set the green to pot and do a .show and do a delay. Okay, let's see if that works. Oh, yeah, look at that. It does work. Oh, kind of works funny, so I'm bringing it up. And then all of a sudden, it goes down to 0, right? And then comes up, brighter, 0, up, brighter, 0, up, brighter. Okay, so the reason that happens is the green here wants an 8-bit, okay? This is sending out a 10-bit value, and this is 8 bits. What happens is the maximum value of 8-bit is 255, right? 255 is 1 plus 2 plus 4 plus 8 plus 16 plus 32 plus 64 plus 128. That equals 255. Well, this one has 2 extra bits, which is 256 and 512. So as soon as it hits 256, those first 8 bytes are now 0. And that 256 byte is 1, okay? And since it can only take those 8 bits, all those 8 bits, even though this is reading 256, that'd be 0, 0, 0, 0, right? For 1, 2, 4, and 8. It'd also be 0, 0, 0, 0 for 16, 32, 64, and 128. And then 256 is at 1 byte, okay? So it happens So here it is. It's 0 all the way up to 255. Then, oh, that's 256 right there ish. Trying to float on it. Okay, then there should be another one at 512. There it goes. So that's at 512. And then we keep going up. And we're at 768. There it is, 768. So that's one on the 256 and one on the 512, which equals 768. And then all the way up to 1023, which is ones everywhere. Ones for every single bit on that, on the 10-bit value and the 8-bit value. Okay. So easy way to fix this. The way I like to fix it in software here is just divide it by 4. And so I'm gonna just write pot divided by 4. And that's going to give me the full range, okay? I can also do some bit shifting, but I'm too lazy for that. Okay, so now we start turning the pot here, right? And it goes from all the way bright to all the way dim. Okay. And there, okay, so I change it from here to halfway, and from halfway up, I guess that wasn't quite halfway. See, so there's all the way bright, there's halfway down, there's the rest of the way down. I'm not always a big fan of that sort of scale, like, because there's not much of a difference between halfway and fully bright, but there's a huge difference between halfway and off, right? So what I like to do is a logarithmic scale, and we'll get into that later, I guess. I think we should just focus on the basics here. So we're reading this pot. It's a 10-bit value between 0 and 1023. This wants a value between 0 and 255. So the easiest way is to divide it by 4. And we're going to start playing with that. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.